It is in the nature of old men to want to give advice. At its best, this kind of advice comes in the form of stories, especially self-deprecating stories. Stories of hard-won lessons from failures along the way. Sometimes it comes in the form of mansplaining, though. You know, nuggets of information condescendingly imparted, especially when it's from a man to a woman. But in the case of Moses, it was in the form of lengthy sermons. Sermons given when the children of Israel were literally on the verge of the Jordan River, preparing to cross over into the Promised Land. He was indeed an old man by then, and would be dead before the people crossed over. He knew his death was imminent, and so his words took on a certain urgency. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, February 16th, 2026. If one could sum up the book of Deuteronomy, which contains a series of sermons of Moses prior to the people's entry into the Promised Land, it would be this: do not forget who brought you here. Over and over and over again throughout Deuteronomy, Moses uses the word remember. Remember who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Remember who brought you through the wilderness. Remember who gave you manna and quail when you were hungry. Remember who gave you water to drink in the middle of the burning desert. Remember. Here's just a portion of what Moses says in one of his sermons. Take care that you do not forget the Lord your God by failing to keep his commandments, his ordinances, and his statutes, which I am commanding you today. When you have eaten your fill and have built fine houses and live in them, and when your herds and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then do not exalt yourself, forgetting the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness, an arid wasteland with poisonous snakes and scorpions. He made water flow for you from flint rock, and he fed you in the wilderness with manna that your ancestors did not know, to humble you and to test you, and in the end to do you good. Do not say to yourself, my power and the might of my own hand have gotten me this wealth. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, so that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your ancestors, as he is doing today. If you do forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and serve and worship them, I solemnly warn you today that you shall surely perish. Remember. Now, remembering on its own is easy. We just need some sort of visual reminder, right? Maybe it's a cross we wear on a chain around our neck. Maybe it's a collection of crosses decorating a wall in our homes. Maybe it's a wooden holding cross we keep in our pockets. Or maybe it's the Bible we keep on our nightstand. These are constant reminders of God and of God's presence. So remembering God is easy. And if that's all Moses meant, we could all just say, praise God, and pass the potatoes. But Moses meant more than simply calling God to mind from time to time. He meant more than recalling the stories about the things God had done. For Moses, remembering meant following. Remembering meant following God's commands. And it meant giving God all the credit for where we are today. Do not say to yourself, my power and the might of my own hand have gotten me this wealth. All that you have and all that you become, says Moses, ultimately derive from God's bountiful gifts. Yes, you may have put in some sweat equity, but you didn't start with nothing. At a bare minimum, you started with a place and with skills and talents, all made possible by God. You see, Moses knew that when times are good, we human beings have a tendency to do two things. First, we forget all the people who helped us get where we are, and we tend to congratulate ourselves for what we've done. We're like the proverbial man who was born on third base and thought he'd hit a triple. Second, we then begin to think we are self-sufficient in life, which is perhaps even more dangerous. If the winter storms of this past week and the past few years have taught us anything, it is how dependent we are upon things quite outside of our control, whether it's the electric grid or the city water supply or anything else that keeps us secure. It turns out we're not self-sufficient. It all reminds me of the old Texas saying, you got to dance with who brung you. Now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.